Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Barry Kostrinsky, president of ATOA, Artist Talk on Art. This is our 82nd virtual open studio. It's November 29th, 2021. ATOA has been around since 1975. All our talks have been live on the Lower West Side of New York City. However, as a result of COVID, we moved to this virtual platform about a year and a half ago. There has been an odd windfall in that we get a lot of people from either Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, California, Hawaii, as far away as Venice, Italy as well. So there have been benefits. We have a board meeting coming up, and very soon we'll make a decision about going back to in-person talks. But at the same time, we will continue the Zoom format. The in-person talks will be first of the month, and then the Zoom format will not only be the other weeks, but more than likely we will attempt to Zoom the in-person talks, and those are held at 12 West 12th Street. We are a 501c3. All our talks are free. We welcome contributions. Our website lists everything. It's atoanyc.org. This talk will eventually, as I'm recording it now, it will eventually be on our YouTube channel. Again, the link for that is on our website, and you can watch it if you like, and as well, you can share it with friends. What's to come for ATOA? There's a calendar section on our website, so you can see. Just beware, we do hear everything through Zoom. The microphones are really good. If you want to mute yourself, go ahead and mute yourself. Our calendar shows what's to come. A lot of exciting talks coming. Again, we hear every Monday. As well, we have a new section, Art for Sale, on our website, and that shows a curated show of some artists that have been selected who have given talks. That will roll out in about a month, and we'll have another show up. And if you'd like to support artists by buying the art in the ATOA, of course, you're welcome, and you can see that on our website. Tonight, we have Earth on the Edge, a show organized, curated by Marcia Annenberg. That's going to be up shortly at Ceres Gallery in New York City. We have, I'm going to guess, about 10 of the artists present. There are 12 artists in the show. So tonight is going to be about 5 minutes for each presenter. I'm going to start off with Marcia Hanenberg. She'll introduce the show, talk about it a little bit, and then she will present her art, and then she'll move alphabetically through the other artists. So first, I want to thank all the artists for coming here, and of course, our audience for coming. We have a great group. We've got 43 people so far. You know our format. Feel free to jump in with a question at any time or a comment, and to use the chat if you like. You can use the chat whether you want to share information about the show, your website, or to make a statement, you know, love the painting or anything you like. So welcome, Marcia, and thank you for organizing this for ATOA.
And Barry, first of all, let me say how thrilled we are to be part of your format and your program. We're so happy to be here, and thank you so much for hosting us. I'm going to start with the screen share to talk a little bit about the mission behind the show and why it was organized. Let me do that first. Okay, so this is called Earth on the Edge. This is the 4th environmental exhibit that I've organized. And you might want to know, why did I call it Earth on the Edge? It's because I really do believe that we've reached a point where we're near tipping points where our ecosystems are kind of in free fall. The Amazon rainforest is now emitting more carbon than it absorbs. The heat dome in the Pacific Northwest this summer was not an anomaly. It will happen again. 1 billion sea creatures died in overheated water. I was actually hoping that the environmental conference COP26 in Glasgow would make the show irrelevant, but that did not happen. We need activism now more than ever, and I'm so thrilled to have these 12 artists to work with me on this issue. This is a picture of Dr. James Hansen. He was the director of NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies for 30 years, and he's my hero. He's influenced a lot of what I do. He came to speak at an exhibit called Earth SOS when I was represented by Eleanor Flummenhoft. He stated in 2008, really a long time ago, in an address to Congress, that the heads of oil and gas companies should be held liable and tried in court for the destruction of the paper in England. Do you all hear me?
No, you did freeze there, but I
I
think
thought you froze, so I want to make sure I didn't freeze. Where did you lose me?
that'll be hard to remember.
Okay, Dr. Hansen stated in the address to Congress that he thought the CEOs of oil and gas companies should be held liable for the destruction of Earth's ecosystem, atmosphere, and oceans. But his speech was not reported in this country. I read about it in the Guardian newspaper in England. So we have to ask ourselves, why didn't we hear his speech? Why wasn't it reported here? This is a picture of me at Flomenhof Gallery, and the artwork is called Early Wednesday Morning. It's based on Hopper's artwork called Early Sunday Morning. And this artwork documents an action that Dr. Hansen took in Washington, D.C., protesting the Keystone XL pipeline in 2013. And the question I wanted to ask people is, why would our top climate scientists go to the extreme action of getting arrested in the middle of the, I don't know if you can see the third panel in the artwork is a pair of hands in handcuffs. Dr. Hansen was actually handcuffed in Washington, D.C. And the really weird thing about his getting arrested isn't that he was arrested or that he chose to get arrested. It's that the only newspaper that actually reported his arrest was the Washington Post. No other newspaper picked up the story. No other hard copy newspaper picked up the story. And I felt like, if we have such a free press, why can't we know that our top climate scientist is getting arrested?
Marcia, I'm only seeing that first image of you by the barber's pole with the 6.
That's okay. It is 150. But you see the third panel with handcuffs, you can't see that.
Yeah, you can see it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Dr. Hansen. This is a really important assessment that states that even if we all keep to 1.5 degrees of warming, 1/3 of the Himalayan glacier is still going to melt. Now, about 1 billion people rely on this glacier for water, for drinking, for their crops, for agriculture. And I felt like that's a really important story. But the only newspaper I read it in was the New York Times. And the other papers on here never carried the story. And so many people don't really know about what's happening in the Himalayan mountains or why it matters to us, like why it should matter to us. And when we think about climate refugees, this is the beginning of a terrible trend as the Earth heats up.
Marcia, Ilse Schreibner Noel asked, why was the doctor arrested? She missed that.
Oh, he was protesting the Keystone XL pipeline. He feels that there's so many emissions in the atmosphere already that there can't be any more development, any more pipelines, any more development of tar sands. We're already over the top. So he was willing to go to jail to make that point. And what made it so terrible to me is that his arrest almost wasn't acknowledged by the country, by the world. Now, nobody knew about it. It just wasn't reported. So, there's a very insidious silencing of the climate movement by the press. And unless you really try to look at who's reporting what, it's not really obvious that this is happening in our country. Did I go too far? Okay. The last picture I want to show you is called What the Gap. And What the Gap analyzes this report called the Emissions Gap Report of 2015. Why is that important? The report, 2019. The
Marcia, maybe begin again, because now you're unfrozen. You froze again. Just maybe go again.
Okay, the emissions gap report of 2019 tells us how much greenhouse gas we're emitting at the moment, but where we need to be to keep worldwide temperature under 1.5 degrees. It's a very important report. And most news sources reported on it. I have 12 international and national sources that I found this report, analyzed in. But the one place that didn't report it was Fox News. It was never on their agenda. They never talked about it. And it's terrible that this channel is the #1 news channel in America because they consistently deny the science of climate change. And they're so influential and they influence so many people. I mean, for us, we don't realize that a quarter of the country actually thinks that climate change is natural, that has nothing to do with greenhouse gas or oil and gas. And Fox News is really very influential in keeping this idea going because they don't report the science. So I was going to go through all the sources that did report it, but I don't want to take up all your time. I just want to say that we really need to change the trajectory of how news is reported in this country because the newscasters are not connecting what's happening, what the science is, and why it's happening, and the connection to oil and gas emissions. And that's something we all need to focus on. Thank you so much.
Marcia, Aviva Ramani says, nice graphics. And let me ask, I see an 8x8 grid that's sort of reminiscent of a chessboard. Am I correct?
Exactly, exactly. And this relates to Dr. James Hansen also because he wrote an op-ed called Game Over. Actually, when Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Treaty, I felt that we were in checkmate because everyone else was in and we were out and they were like keeping us in check. But that's where it came from. It came from Dr. Hansen's op-ed called Game Over for the Planet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chrisanne, are you with us? Is Chrisanne here?
Well, first, we always applaud.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Very nice, Marcia.
Thank you.
It's been recommended by Lawrence, if we continue to have interference and freezing, that some of us sort of don't show our video. I think, he knows his tech stuff, and it's possible that is sort of, clouding up the information that's streaming. Let's try it just the same, because I do enjoy seeing faces as opposed to names. And Marcia, you let us know who's going to speak next.
Well, if Chrisanne is not on, Lois Bender, are you ready, Lois?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Marcia. It's wonderful to be part of this group of artists exploring the terrible catastrophes happening to our environment. And Marcia had asked me to work with the coral reefs, and I really love the suggestion because the devastation to the reefs is terrible. And the reefs represent the beauty of the color in the ocean. They're sea gardens. And of course, I'm showing you a few of the healthy, beautiful reefs that we have. And you can see this coloration, and the animals that are corals are coming out of their calcium structures that create the beautiful reefs, their homes, their houses. These beautiful photographs are taken from this incredible documentary called Chasing Corals. And I put the link into the chat because it's a free documentary you'll find on YouTube. But you can see these healthy corals are just absolutely beautiful. This is a state where they're starting to bleach. And one of the manifestations in bleaching is a fluorescence that begins. So even though these look beautiful, these are a fluorescent kind of secretion on the corals that show that they're dying. I mean, the beauty is a reflection of the poor state of the corals there. The next picture I want to show you is this beautiful kind of coral structure. The corals are absolutely magnificent. Their structures are beautiful. I mean, I studied some of the types so that I could do the art for it. And I'm presenting in the show a installation of, let me go back up here. This is what the corals are looking like right now. And Chasing Corals shows you, and it's about an 1.5-hour documentary of the divers and scientists are looking to see where this is happening. They're trying to take films about how this happens. But this is really, I know white is beautiful, but this reflects the poor state of affairs. So I absolutely love color. And so I created this artwork that I'll show at the show. And I'm working with the full beauty of the corals as they are healthy. And it's almost as though we're looking at an aquarium when we have the black framing here. In the show, it'll be on a white wall. And in this show, I included one of the last panels here is showing the bleaching. Each one of these is a work on paper, and I worked on them with stencils and alcohol dyes and spraying them. Each is 20 by 26. And so that when it's composed in this manner, it's 7 feet across by 7 feet. I'll show each one individually. And in this case, I'm working with drips. I'm working with the stencils and I'm repositioning them so that I can show the layers and the kind of gradations of colors. And I really enjoyed doing this. And you can see that between the fish life, I mean, the corals represent occupations for so much of part of the world. They provide the habitat for the fish. The life is important to humanity, especially at the shorelines. And what's destroying it is pollution, tourism, trash, microplastics, sedimentation from development, water pollution, and blast mining or dynamite and cyanide to create to fish. So it's a terrible state of affairs. And these shows, we have the corals that look like animal horns. You have brain corals. They're wonderful types. It was fun to explore and research. Here you have the repetition of the amoebic forms. And the splatter is just fun to work on it. And the truth is that these images look good 4 times ahead of the finish. So it's very hard to know when to stop. And I am coming to the close of the details of the show. You have distinct forms that are, they were fun to research. So I'm happy to have the opportunity. And this is based on the bleaching of the corals. And you can see that, you know, it's a disaster that we're losing them. You see vast fields of white corals under the water. I do recommend really seeing that film, and you'll be amazed at how fast this devastation is happening. And so now that I've shown you the full series of artworks in the show, I'm ready to say thank you and give the floor to the next artist presenting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Beautiful.
I do want to read a few of the comments. They all have one thing in common. They're all saying it's beautiful, but I do want to give credit. iPhone, I don't know who you are, it just says iPhone, says just beautiful, Lois. Jenna Lash says your work is beautiful and meaningful, Lois. Leah Poller, beautiful, Lois, very touching.
Thank you.
Lothorial Badenhausen asked, do you make stencils, Lois?
Yes, they're really all created fresh. I didn't buy any. And it's not hard. I mean, I used to paint on silk scarves, and The alcohol dyes are, I collected my leftovers and I bought some new alcohol dyes, but the stencils were, it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed. I am very much a decorative artist and a colorful artist. So this is what happens when you put the two together.
Well, so is Matisse, and so decorative is not the worst word.
Mhm.
Simone Spicer says, beautiful, Lois. Sandra Indig says, love the layering and your lightness of hand. And yes, Ilse Schreibner-Knoll asks, is the bleaching caused by the warming of the water? Yes, it is from the, it could only be a degree and a half, and it makes a very big difference to corals. And Norma Greenwood, a board member of ATOA, says, great presentation, Lois. And by the way, I do want to recognize Fran Beeler, another ATOA board member that's here. So we will move on, and I do have the alphabetical here. It's Walter Brown, you're up next.
Okay,
Well,
Thank you,
welcome,
everybody.
Walter.
so let me go to share screen. Oops.
Just reminding everybody, this is ATOA. We're here every Monday. We're a 501c3. Our website's atoanyc.org. And we can accept contributions via PayPal or just about any way. But thank you all for coming. Walter, where are you coming in from?
I'm in the city, but when I hit share screen, I get this, oh wait, desktop.
Yes.
Okay, so now why isn't it going to my desktop?
You have to click share again
Share.
on the lower right-hand side.
So I clicked share. Oh, and then open system preferences. It's
Oh
saying-
dear.
I
That
was
happened
able-
to me. I'll tell you what you need to do.
Okay,
Go into your system's preferences
okay.
and scroll down to where it says activity, something about accessibility.
Okay. Well, when I just clicked on open system preferences, it brings me back to this group shot. Damn it.
You're a Mac or PC?
Walter, are you on a Mac or on a PC?
I'm on a Mac. I'm on a Mac.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, you want to navigate to wherever you're showing the pictures. So you're probably using preview.
Well, now it just has the zoom up there.
Right, but when you go into share screen, it gives you multiple options.
To access your desktop.
Okay, let me try that again.
Mm,
Okay, here's the, when I click share screen, this is, I guess you can't see this, but yeah, multiple system preferences. Okay. Damn it.
We'll get it to work. We always do. We always run into little problems.
I know, I've done this before and
Try iCloud.
iCloud.
Well, where do you have the pictures?
Well, they're in, I have them in the program that I was going to use.
Yes, so
Let me
that's,
okay, wait a second. I think.
so
I
the
know.
program you're going to use is where you want to navigate to.
Right,
Right, so not desktop.
right.
So Walter, that happened to me too. And what I did, I went out of the Zoom
Okay,
and then opened the page where you have your pictures, then went back into the Zoom, and then you can share it because it's already open on your screen. That's what happened to me, but it worked for me. If you
okay,
want
so
to try it. And then Barry has to let you back in again.
okay, so I'm going to leave the meeting, you're saying.
And what we'll do is, I'll just move on to the next presenter. We'll
Okay,
come back to
okay.
Walter.
Okay.
Noreen Dean Dresser.
Okay. All right, here we go. Okay. No, I don't want to do that. I have you. I don't want to do you. All right, so.
Problem is we practice and it works for everybody.
Yeah. You came up on desktop, see, so I need to, oh, I know, I need to do this. There we go. All right.
Ellen Pliskin said about
Did you
Lois.
come in? Did it come in?
No, the right way to do it is first open your program that you
Right,
want
go
us to
down.
see, and then go to the screen share.
All right. So let me-
Ellen says of your work, Lois, they just glow, and I love the idea of a wall of these images.
Well, thank you, Ellen. Thank you, everybody.
All right, there we go.
There you go.
All right. Okay, so I want to pick on some of the themes that were talked about. I think what's really, this is my oil from my oil and water series, 2012 to 2021. This is on linen, and it's made with virgin olive oil on Belgian linen with acrylics. And then the canvas was burned off the stretcher bar. All that's important because I want in my images to reflect the actual reality, so that the Gulf storm, which, spill that happened when the Deep Horizon platform blew up, which is the worst Gulf spill, the worst oil spill on record, on April 2010. By BP. And we all know that history, but I wanted to reflect on virgin olive oil as taking on that idea of there's a kind of innocence. And I don't feel personally as if it isn't like we don't know climate change is happening, or terrible disasters are happening, or that crops are being lost, or that people are moving. What it is that our priorities are such that they favor the market, and they favor financial institutions, and people fear for their jobs. So when people start to feel like they're losing jobs, such as coal miners, they vote. They act on that fear. And so I think that what my work is interested in is in the idea of personal responsibility, that I don't believe that it'll ultimately be a political solution, that we really have to build outward from everyone taking personal responsibility for what they can do in their lives to change things. So I'm going to show a second image that kind of touches on this for me, which was my postcard series, Couriers of Our Natures. And this one is, of course, Smokey the Bear. And if you remember that image is from the Forest Department. And it was only you can prevent forest fires. And it was extraordinarily effective because over time, people started paying attention to how they smoked and what they did with campfires and so on and so forth. And so I think it's been one of the more effective campaigns in terms of shifting public opinion. I'm a big fan of Smokey. So that's kind of like my artwork is interested in personal ethics and how to be transformative so that the image and people reading about the image will give them a space where they can make some incremental shift inside them that hopefully, which will help the conversation along. Because I really think at this point, like the amount of plastic in the world, if we all just don't stop buying product, if we don't start actually affecting the markets, I don't believe we can win it through a political solution. I don't think we have time. So I think we really have to start to hit at the market. My personal commitment, I just moved our house, our whole building off oil. We're in the process of going to a clean energy electrical. So that's who I am as an artist. And that's really my viewpoint that I go into it. I'm really interested in the moral fiber of where we are today and the personal decisions we make and how that will, on a massive scale affect things. Thank you.
Lovely.
Very nice. I will say, once you involve the marketplace, that's how changes come. you really have to make it a financial disincentive.
Right.
There's no question about that. I've seen it. I used to have a factory when there was a tax on some degreaser that I used that was $500. I very quickly found another solution. So to your point,
Yeah.
money moves things.
Money moves things, yeah. I just want to say one more thing is that if we all look back, if we look back even like 125 years, we look at slavery and we moved people and resources all over the world, destroyed massive amounts of land holdings and nations of people, slaughtered them for the benefit of market. And so to ignore that history in our discussion today of environment, it makes no sense to me. We know they will let people die. That won't move them. So we have to be part of that movement.
Alyssa Pritzker says, great to hear and see art with an important and current topic. Thanks to all the artists for presenting. Lois Bender says, wonderful advocacy. Use money ethically. Basically, vote with your dollars.
Yeah.
I think we'll move on. I don't see Walter back just yet.
I am back. I'm here.
Oh, you are? Okay,
Yes.
sorry, Walter.
No, that's okay.
So have up what you want on your screen. So
It's there. It was. So now I'm going to share screen. And now it's telling me open system preferences. And then it, okay. Now where's now it gives me this. I don't know why I'm having trouble now. Share screen. Google Drive. Go to the next person. I'm just going to open my phone and do it from my phone.
okay.
I don't know why I'm having this problem.
I
All right,
just
and
wanted
then-
to ask, can I
Yes.
ask you one question? Walter, do you have some kind of block on sharing on your screen that's in your system preferences? I mean, did you guys practice this and you got on before?
I got on, yeah.
Okay, never mind then.
Did get
Okay,
on.
sorry.
All right, we'll move to Dr. Nigella Hilgarth. Did I not butcher that too much?
You did it very well. Okay, I will share my screen and start. Thanks, Barry. And, there we go. Okay, can you all see that? Excellent. So what I'm going to talk about is the series of 12 images that I'm showing in the exhibition, which is actually really a little bit more about some of the details of the science of climate change. I think you're all aware how complex the study of climate is and how much it involves so many different scientific disciplines.
Right.
And what I was asked to do in the summer of 2019 was to talk about or be the professional photographer for a big experiment at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, which was bringing together 12 institutions, some international, and 94 scientists to try and understand the impact of ocean aerosols, that is, any gases and molecules that come off the ocean and enter the atmosphere, how that actually alters the chemistry of the environment. So in order to do that, they built a 100-foot-long wave machine and generated artificial waves breaking on an artificial shore. And so I started off by taking a lot of images of scientists, collecting gases with big machines and so on. And it really wasn't that exciting. And what I wanted to do was to bring people down into the seawater to, in their imagination at least, look into some of the problems, some of the areas that the scientists were studying. And so what I then started doing was collaborating with some of the microbiologists to take microscopic images, which I then led over some of the breaking waves and some of the bubbles. So if you like, I'm trying to take the audience down into the aerosols that are being generated when the waves break. And in this image, so I'm creating abstract images, but they're also mixed with the science. You can see salt crystals and bundles of bacteria with the salt crystals. And these bacteria are greatly influencing the formation of clouds, the effect of pollution, all sorts of different aspects of climate change that, if we understand better, help us refine our models and hopefully help us a little bit with how we deal with some of the inevitable problems of a warming world, even if we're able to stop emissions tomorrow, which of course, sadly, we know we won't, for all the reasons that previous speakers have mentioned. So these are more of these particulates found in seawater that are like one drop of seawater superimposed on breaking bubbles. And then I'm taking this out of the experiment to the open ocean and showing what happens every time waves crash on the shore. You're getting this explosion of aerosols that we can't see that's going into our lower atmosphere. And so this is just another example that I'm showing. And here I've put in a bird that I also take a lot of photographs of birds, and this is a cormorant and in the surf. And so I'm showing what we can't see is that this bird is surrounded by all sorts of gases and all sorts of microorganisms that it's breathing in. And as humans, when we are in the surf, we're breathing often now, unfortunately, so much of our shoreline is polluted, we're also breathing in pollutants as well. So here we are in the more open ocean, we're still getting crashing waves, and the same mechanism is happening. All the interactions that are happening in the surface seawater are being thrown into the atmosphere through these bubbles that break and they're generated when the waves break. And then I collaborated with another microbiologist, Claire Morris, in order to get even far more blown up images, if you like, much bigger depth. And here you're actually seeing a tiny plankton, a diatom, which is a single cell plant. And I did a lot of work with the staining and so forth to bring out different colors. But to me, it looks like some sort of alien, but it's the result of a bloom of algae, like a little bit like a red tide that you see in the ocean, where you've got an awful lot of these organisms at once. I liken it to something like the migration of wildebeest in the Serengeti being attacked by predators like lions, because all around this diatom, you'll see splodges of red purple, which is clumps of bacteria, which are beginning to attack the diatom. And the blue squiggly lines are lines of viruses, which are also beginning to attack and devour the diatom. And as this sort of dramatic battle is going on, all these different molecules are being created, which go into the atmosphere with the gases in breaking waves. And as the ocean warms up, you're going to get an increased amount of these gases, which are causing major problems in our atmosphere and really influence precipitation, so influence cloud formation and therefore rain. So this is, again, just sort of going out a little bit and showing what these viruses and bacteria are happening. It's not just the salt crystals and large clumps. This is in finer detail, the same with an exploding wave on the seashore. But I think even more frightening, what I learned from the scientists during this experiment was, as the ocean warms up, it's not just breaking waves that are causing problems. We're getting constant evaporation from the ocean, and not just water evaporation, which is very important for the storms and other problems. We're also getting an awful lot of these gases, these aerosols, which are impacting the environment chemistry, just going up because we're heating up the surface of the ocean so much. So in this series, I really wanted to draw people's attention to an area of climate change that most people know nothing about, which may be really critical for understanding how we move forward, but also a note of hope that there's also the possibility that it may allow us in the future to actually generate more clouds and more rain. So there is a note of hope in these experiments going forward. And with that, I think I will stop sharing my screen.
Fascinating, Nigella,
Yeah.
so fascinating.
Thanks.
Leah Paula says art and science are converging. Their synergy is adding muscle to problem solving for our planet. And Babs Reingold says, I like the concept and the images are beautiful. And she echoes Alyssa's comment. It's wonderful to see artists working on images that deal with the different issues of climate change, the existential crisis of our time. Marcia Annenberg says fascinating. And Lothorio Badenhouse says, Nigella, thank you. And I'll have to thank you for sort of adding on a positive note too. A talk like this can be a little heavy, but I like how you threw that in there. And I think in some way Noreen did as well, sort of offering a call to action for everybody to do a little something, and somehow that will come together to make a big change. We're going to try Walter Brown one more time because that's our favorite thing to do. Walter, I saw you just came back in. And Walter, I did put something in the chat. If it doesn't work this time, send your images to Michael Krasowitz. I put his email in there,
Okay.
and he'll share, but I think it's going to work now.
Okay, let's see. See, I get this funny. I'm going to just send it to Michael Krasowitz. What's his email, Barry?
Take a look in the chat. You see the chat?
Yes.
You'll see it. I sent you a direct message with this
Okay.
email.
Let me. Okay.
All right. And let's see. We'll move on to Kathy Levine. Is Kathy present tonight?
She was there.
Yeah, she is here. Kathy's
You have to
here.
unmute. Oh, you did.
Welcome, Kathy. Where are you coming in from?
I'm coming in from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
Hopefully putting this up on the screen. All
Yeah.
right. Can everyone see that?
Yes, perfectly.
All right, let me put view slideshow. Okay. All right. My name's Kathy Levine, and I've been an ecologically minded artist for the past 39 years. And I've been interested in the intersection of the human and natural world since I was a child, growing up in a very rural area of England and Spain, and very close, I guess, in contact with water, trees, all kinds of things like that. And in this first piece, Rising Tide, I was making a paper mold, or I call them cast paper, but it's actually a mold made from recycled paper. And then I was casting it off of the edge of a lake in upstate New York called Huka Lake. And it's in the Finger Lake area of New York. And it's actually one of the Finger Lakes, and one of the smaller Finger Lakes, but it's pretty big. Anyway, while I was making this paper cast on the edge of the lake, unbeknownst to me, this huge boat passed by. And I guess it was curious about what I was doing there on the edge of the lake with the paper. And it created this enormous wave, which like drenched me and also the piece of art that I was making. And at first I thought, it's ruined, the piece, because I got total, paper when it gets totally wet, falls apart. So anyway, but then after a little while, I noticed after a few minutes, I noticed that it looked really interesting, the way that the holes and the lake debris that the wave brought about was actually kind of interesting. And also I kind of liked the idea that it was a collaboration, like between the lake and myself. And the piece turned out to be this piece, and you could see that there are a lot of little holes. And if you actually see the thing in person, you could see little pieces of branches and stuff that's stuck in there, and seed pods, and actually pieces of plastic. These are plastic pieces there. And so anyway, basically what this piece is about is a couple of things having to do with our natural world and the human interaction with it. And it has to do with, the rising of the water, water and the tides and all kinds of things like that all over the planet. And actually, I got to talking with some of the people who live around Keuka Lake. And they said that in 2019, when I made this piece during a residency there, that the lake had risen higher than they had ever seen it before. And they were really, and they also said that a lot of their homes had been, many homes on the lake had been flooded that year that hadn't been flooded in the past. So it basically indicated to them that global warming and climate change were actually happening. So the piece is also about plastic pollution, because in this one little kind of area, which is like maybe a foot by 2 feet wide, I found like maybe 15 pieces of plastic, styrofoam, all kinds of, little bits of things stuck in there. I put that piece, the fish piece, in there, but you could see little pieces of cups, I don't know, all kinds. This was, I think, styrofoam. And so anyway, so the piece is also about, plastic pollution and how it's affecting the fish in the lake. Basically, the upside down fish indicates that, that the fish have been negatively impacted, as well as other lake inhabitants. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. In this piece, I did a series of I guess, cross sections of trees that fell during Hurricane Sandy. And in this piece called One Way After Sandy, you could see a branch of this tree that is dangling kind of precariously off of a street lamp. And at the base of the tree, you could see all this, like all the branches of the tree that fell during the storm. And basically the tree didn't survive, as many other trees in our neighborhood didn't survive. We had basically every street was blocked by trees that had fallen, or parts of them that had fallen. So, so when I saw this, I really, after the storm, the hurricane, or I don't know if it was a hurricane actually, but it was a pretty bad, really bad storm, that I realized the monumental, and it really hit home, the monumental and devastating impact that global warming and increased carbon in our atmosphere can have on our lives. And these are a couple more in that series from just a few, like 1 block away. This was another tree, huge tree that got upended, just kind of fell and brought down and pulled up the sidewalk. And you could see the people walking up some of the concrete here. And so basically, the storm did a lot of damage, and also it hit, a lot of the trees hit houses, and this one hit part of a house. So it did a lot of just devastation that way. And then in this third one, which was also part of this cross-section series, you see, this one's called Lament. You see like a huge tree or half of a tree that fell on a car, like crushing it like a bug. And so, and then you see also a girl sort of running or walking away in fright and horror at what she just saw. So it really had a very big impact, this storm, on, I think, New Yorkers. And I think it made us realize that we were dealing with something much bigger than maybe what we thought. And then just to, do I have time, or am I running out of time?
Let's do 1 more minute. I do want to read from the chat. Babs Rangold asked, is the process layering in Photoshop, and what size are these?
Oh, well, this is this one is, some of them are, they're all different sizes, but this one is 16 by 16 inches. And it's actually a single sheet of paper that I place over the cross section, or actually the actual object, which is in this case the cross section of a tree. And then when I make the paper, I take out most of the water from the paper, and I just leave, but it's still damp, so that when you put it on the, over the mold, in this case, the tree, and you push it, you know, with your fingers or a sponge, you could actually get, you get a mold of whatever's underneath. The paper actually gives you an impression of what was there, and then it dries, and when the paper dries, it hardens in the shape of whatever was underneath it. So in this case, yeah, the cross section of the tree. And then afterwards I use, I pull the paper off of the mold, and then I use gesso and paint and other materials. But in this case, no photographs were used, although sometimes I use photo transfers in my work. So, but in this case, I painted everything. So anyways, I could, you know, because I think I've talked a lot.
All right, so we'll move on. First, our usual round of applause.
Thank you.
Fran Beeler states, thank you all for the work you do. This is such an important topic, one I focus on in some of the threads of my own artwork. I know all the artists presenting tonight, except for the microbiologist. That's because you don't hang out with doctors, Fran, and have been following your work for years. The urgency in addressing the climate crisis has increased, and you have all stepped up to the challenge of getting the word out through your work, which is both meaningful and beautiful. Nicely said, Fran.
Oh, and can I just say one more thing? That also, after seeing all this devastation in the neighborhood, to end on a more positive note, I became a tree steward with the Million Tree Program. And then I also got involved and started my own tree care program in the neighborhood. So we basically, I take care of trees and also plant them. So that helps the, you know, trees absorb a lot of carbon in the atmosphere. So it's a way of combating climate change and the amount of carbon that's built up there. So anyway, I hope everybody, or I hope a lot of you come to the opening and the show. And look forward to seeing you there.
Very nice. I'm going to say, let's move to Angela Manno. Walter, did you send the email to Michael? Well, we'll
Send
come
me
back.
something on Google Slides. I'm trying to access it.
Okay, take your time. We'll move forward to Angela Manno. Angela, welcome.
Hello.
Boy, that was a quick screen share.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I'm going to now play the slideshow. So I wanted to start by saying I'm both an artist and an activist. I've been involved in many campaigns. One was the anti-fracking campaign, which was a successful campaign to rid New York State of fracking, as well as opposing military intrusion on densely populated areas and pristine wilderness areas. I feel that since human behavior stems from our beliefs and values, I've always tried to share my perceptions through my art in order to affect human consciousness and therefore our behavior. So I'm going to start with a piece from my series, Conscious Evolution, The World at One, which is now housed in the Smithsonian Institute's National Air and Space Museum. The following piece is entitled, I Stood on the Lunar Surface, and is inspired by this quote by Eugene Cernan, who was the last man to walk on the moon, who said, I stood in the blue darkness and looked in awe at the earth from the lunar surface. What I saw was almost too beautiful to grasp. The series focused on the big picture and seeing our planet from a distance and the challenges and opportunities that face humanity. This piece was created in batik and color Xerox, and you can see that quote is handwritten at the bottom of the piece.
Nice.
Thank you. That led to a commission from NASA in 1989. I spent 3 days behind the scenes along with 4 other artists, and it was to commemorate the US return to space flight after the Challenger accident. So we stood in the press area and watched the launch, which, you know, the shuttle disappeared in about, it seemed so fast. And I thought, what are we really doing? You know, in a kind of mythological sense. And this quote came to me by Joseph Campbell, and where we had thought to travel outwards, we shall come to the center of our own existence. And the title of this piece is Self-Discovery. The shuttle was actually the Space Shuttle Discovery, which you can see encircling this, this form with the astronaut in the middle. It's in the shape of a mandala and also a medicine wheel, which is used in Native American traditions for healing ceremonies. We're going to move on. This is a little palette cleanser because the next series of images are very different from what you've just seen. In 1996, I had the rare opportunity to begin learning Byzantine Russian icon painting with a master iconographer from Russia. This is an icon of Archangel Michael of the Apocalypse, and all of the images that you do as an iconographer are they're established imagery that have been handed down through the ages. But not long into the practice, I felt something, well, I knew something was missing. Nature was really merely the backdrop for the human divine drama, and acutely aware that humans are derivative of the earth, and including all the saints and holy characters that are depicted in icons. I started conceptualizing a new icon of the whole earth from space. And I paired it, I like to pair my images with words, and I paired it with this quote by my mentor, Thomas Berry, which is his vision of an ecological age. A luxuriant earth community mutually enhancing in all of its layers and levels of life and being, where the minds of the universe are safeguarded and nurtured, where the creativity of each nation of every species is energized for the total vibrancy and joy of the whole community of beings. And this is the icon of, it's entitled The Earthly Paradise, icon of the third millennium. It's created in the same method and materials as in traditional icons. And I added another dimension to the physical planet by encircling the fragile envelope of the atmosphere with a gold halo to portray the Earth as having reached its fulfillment as a bio-spiritual entity. Then it was, however, as we entered the new millennium, it seemed to me that instead of moving towards an ecological age, humans were exploiting the Earth with ever more violent means, leading to the endangerment and extinction of species at the rate of 150 per day, which is 1,000 times more than the normal rate. And it was at this time that I began my project of icons of threatened and endangered species to lift up the intrinsic value of all beings. And you mentioned Barry E.O. Wilson earlier. This is a quote that I just heard him say not long ago online. Global warming is only the first of 3 environmental crises humanity has been destined to pass through this century as a consequence of human action, each related to and impacting the others. Global loss, I'm sorry, I have to minimize this. Global loss of biodiversity is the only one that's irreversible. So these are a few of the works that will be in the show, Earth on the Edge. They're also executed in the same method and materials as traditional icons. This is an icon of the pangolin, which is the most illegally trafficked animal on the face of the earth, poached and slaughtered for their scales, for the same reason rhinos are being hunted to extinction, magical powers associated to another body part. Their scales, ironically, are used for protection in the wild, but attract lethal human predators from whom they have no protection. This is an icon of the honeybee. They are severely threatened due to the use of toxic pesticides, destruction of habitat, and lack of forage due to monocultures. They have been dying off at a record rate for the past decade, and without bees and other pollinators, 30% of our crops would be wiped out. However, we have to remember that aside from their use to human beings, they have intrinsic value. This is an icon of the Florida panther. It is now critically endangered with about 100 individuals left in the wild. Human encroachment and vehicle collisions are the main threats to this beautiful, majestic animal. One of the quotes that I'm very fond of repeating is Thomas Berry's quote, where he says, okay, now I can't remember it. Hold on a second. I'm gonna exit here.
While you do that, I'm going to read a couple of the comments. Leah Paula says she loves the quotations that inform your work. I think we all are getting like an extra dimension from what you're quoting. Marcia Annenberg, the curator and organizer of the show, says she loves the concept of the holiness of disappearing species. And Babs Reingold says, great quotes. Yes, the loss of biodiversity is devastating. And as Wilson said, it's not reversible. You can't really create species. Nigella Hilgarth says, your icons are so beautiful as well as important. I'll have to add that, you know, whenever you can go back to an earlier time and use a very old technique and bring it forward, there's some sort of magic in that. Often something new is really just a combination of 2 old things. Simone Spicer says, these are fabulous. I love how you have spiritualized and immortalized the animal, the biodiversity. So let's go with maybe one more minute or less, Angela, and then we'll move on.
Sure. Well, I wanted to say that another way of activism is that I donate 50% of the sales of my work to the Center for Biological Diversity. They're a really great group that does a lot to safeguard species and their habitat. And what I wanted to close with this quote from Thomas Berry: "While the human cannot make a blade of grass, there is liable not to be a blade of grass unless it is accepted, protected, and fostered by the human." And with that, I will leave you, and I look forward to seeing you at the exhibition. Thank you.
Very nice. I think we'll move to Ann Shapiro. We will get to you, Walter Brown. There's no question. Even if it's midnight, we are going to make this work. I just do want to run through the other presenters first. So Ann, welcome. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Yep. Did we come up?
Yep, excellent.
All right. In 2002, I read a 3-part article by Elizabeth. I'm not seeing you guys. That's disconcerting. All right, here you are.
We see you. Okay.
Okay, I see you. I read a 3-part article by Elizabeth Colbert in the New Yorker about the increasing problem of climate change. And among the many concerning issues, I was shocked by the notion of houses in Alaska at a tilt because the permafrost was melting beneath them. I'm a landscape artist, and this became my landscape. It became my mission to be one of the people to tell the world what was happening. Well, I heard the 39 years of involvement, but it's been almost 20 years later, and there is nothing yet that will stop this catastrophe in the making. I am not saying that there has been no improvement. There has been, and we have to continue on that. I am saying that it's not enough. We see it every day in all kinds of media, newspapers, radios, TV. We see fires out of control. We see increased intensity of tornadoes, rains, hurricanes, all weather-related phenomena. I was fortunate to get to Maine this past summer, to the island that my mother and her brothers and sisters were born. And it was warm. This was a place where in the summer when I was a kid, you had better have a jacket because it would be cold in the evening. This is a place where my mother told me that when she was a kid, one winter in the bay, the ice froze all the way to Isle Ho, an island 18 miles away. When I got home from my 4-day visit, I learned that the island's weather had been classified as subarctic. It was now too warm to be subarctic. In 2019, when Marcia Annenberg and I decided to curate a climate change show, I created the first piece in what is now my Raging Climate series.
And can you slide your image over a little more?
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. I had this out of order. This was the piece that I did in the 2019 show. And then this was the size of it. You can see the photo is not good. And then this is the piece that I am going to be showing in our show this year in December. And my digital work in climate change is changing. It's moving from a more didactic, when I should have pulled up a picture, but at this point, you're probably grateful because we've been running long. I was more didactic. I wanted to tell people this is what's happening and to express what I see, perhaps metaphorically, if we didn't take care of these issues. These new pieces also express what I fear for the future, the agony of our future landscapes. And that is it. Okay, I want to, there we are. Thank you.
Stunning, stunning.
Thank you. the cat wants to participate.
Let's move on to Simone Spicer. Welcome, Simone.
Hi, thank you. Screen share. Okay, so I know. I'm a sculptor and I'm in Philadelphia, and a friend of mine had given me her 20-year collection of action figures spanning from the 50s up until present time. And I just couldn't believe how amazing they were. I repainted my studio floor, and Marcia Annenberg asked me if I would be part of this show, and I was super happy to participate in it. And I didn't really have a thought of what I wanted to make. And then when I got these action figures, as most of my work is about overconsumption, overpopulation, trash in the environment, I thought I should use them and make some kind of an epic piece involving storms of characters. So I thought, what if I put them all on little surfboards and have them on a huge tidal wave, like make a big paper mache tidal wave and have all these figures surfing it, would relate to themes of climate change and sea level rise. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to use a wave, what if I start thinking about Hokusai's famous The Great Wave off the island of Kanagawa. And I didn't really know much about his wave, but in researching, learning that it really is a metaphor for what was happening in Japan. He did this sometime around 1830. And really what it's about are thoughts of Western invasion in Japan. Japan had just opened up to the Western world after being on lockdown since the 1600s, punishable by death. Nobody could enter or exit Japan for centuries. And all of a sudden, Westerners are coming in and trade is happening. And the metaphor, it's not so much about a tidal wave off the island of Kanagawa as it is about the Japanese culture, being threatened by the West. And that's what the big wave represented. So working off of this image, I started making this huge paper mache wave in my studio. And this is a picture of it in progress. It's pretty complicated. I had to cut it in half, and it's hanging on pulleys in my studio so that I could get the top half to work like a breaking wave over your head. So where Hokusai's wave is about people being threatened by other people, my wave is literally about the interaction between nature and the people. And it's about globalization, as there are so many figures. So here's my fully painted piece, the only piece that I'm going to have in the show. And it's 7 feet tall and 7 feet wide, and projects from the wall by 4 feet. So the top half, God help me with installation, the top half hangs on a hook and gets screwed to the wall, and the bottom half slides in underneath it. And I just wanted to show you some details about just what the figures are doing, and how it's kind of fascinating to think, who's represented here and how it's represented as toys. And there's a lot of clues in this piece as to how people feel about other cultures. And anyway, it was a lot of fun working the paper mache and then figuring out how the figures on surfboards would fit into it. And I was kind of surprised to see how my original idea was that the wave was going to be this big, powerful thing. And this army of people were, heading to their demise, which really is what it's about. But the army of the figures is kind of overtakes the wave. So there's this balance for me between the power of the figure and the person and the power of nature. In some instances, nature wins, and other instances on the wave, the figures seem to be, they're going to come through. This is a boat of princess figures,
Wow.
Linda and Barbie. And it's really kind of fun to look at all of the characters. Some I don't know, and that I had to learn from younger people who they actually were. This boat, in Hokusai's print, there are 3 boats, which I like the idea of having the boats because I was able to put more of these figures onto the piece. And some are really violent images and not very child, conducive to child play. He's got a cigarette and there's a guy over here who's shooting a gun in the air. So it's about interactions, people and animal combinations.
Simone, I just want to read some of the comments and then you can continue.
Okay.
Marcia Annenberg says, a very moving new piece. Jenna Lash, the surreal colors eerily represent a slice of this timely topic. Again, Marcia says it is so amazing. You've provided a lot of eye candy, obviously, but you've also clashed, whether it's Kermit the Frog or some figures that usually just don't go with the other figures, and that provides a lot of visual story. Babs Reingold says, fantastic, Simone. Avi Ramani says, love this. Jenna Lash goes on to say, exciting cultural sculpture to express your idea and depict your concept. Marcia Annenberg says, a weird Noah's Ark, definitely a weird Noah's Ark.
Yay!
That's a great one. And I mean, it's a little bit of true about our culture because all these things are from our culture. Leah Poller says, a perfect NFT project, not to lose your fabulous collection. Noreen Dean Dresser says, our commercially dismissal fabulous. Angela Manno, all the flotsam and jetsam of our throwaway plastic culture. And I have to add, you've taken what would be throwaway and you've turned it into art. Certainly one of the great roles for artists to take on. Lois Bender says, so original, pop culture and Japanese floating world. Wonderful. Kathy Levine, amazing piece, Simone. So very nice. Keep going.
And that was the last one. So let's see.
Okay, I'll end the screen share. If that's okay.
Thank you.
Very nice. And now what we've all been waiting for. Walter Brown. Walter, we're gonna, Michael, are you ready to go? I'm gonna ask you to unmute Michael. Let's see. Oh, look at this. We are gonna see Walter.
Okay.
Yay.
Can you hit on the present button, Michael? Okay, here it is. I don't know what happened. I apologize, and thank you, Michael, for helping me out. This is actually the second slide. There should be one before this.
Okay.
No, the other way. Oh,
By the way, I do want to thank Michael.
The other way, Michael.
You know what? I'm not sure how to get. Let me see. Hold on. I'm just going to go to the first slide. This is the first one, right?
No, this is like the third, or this is the second one.
Oh, click on the one. Yeah, go ahead, Michael. Click on that. Michael always.
Okay, maybe this is, yeah, click on the one.
I
Okay,
think
well,
this is
okay.
fine.
This is fine. Anyway, I've been making these plastic abstract sculptural units. And the way it came about was around 5 years ago or so, I had three more or less simultaneous things happen. One was I became aware of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, that area in the Pacific Ocean, supposedly the size of Texas, composed of plastic waste. And around the same time, I made the, I came to the realization that when I put my plastic waste into the recycle bin, it's just as likely to end up not being recycled as all this as being recycled. And only a small fraction of the recyclable material is actually being recycled. And the third thing that happened around that time was that I was looking for a medium with which to work. And plastic, because it's cheap and ubiquitous, was an obvious choice for me. So I imagined what things would look like in that garbage patch, the way pieces would randomly float by each other, strange combinations would happen over time from the heat of the sun, and the chemicals or natural things in the ocean water would cause degradation. And how would that look? And then I wondered if I could perhaps simulate the way things would look by applying heat to the plastic, which would be basically speeding up the process that would be occurring naturally. So here, for instance, the image on the left is a lunch, one of my lunches with salad and a cup of coffee. Of course, the salad came in a plastic bowl with a plastic fork, and the coffee had one of those plastic containers. The middle image is just those objects without the food anymore and without the paper. And on the right is how it looked after I applied heat to it and melted it down. So I had this tiny little sculptural unit. Next slide. As I made more and more of these, I dealt with various issues as they came up. Sometimes, like the piece on top, there would be no remnant of, so you can't recognize what this came from. Other times I would leave some figuration in there so you could see the top of a dispenser bottle, for instance, but the rest of it is uninterpretable. And some of them were, like this top one, were surprisingly elegant, and they looked nice on a coffee table, for instance. Next slide, Michael. And I was also looking at color. The image on the bottom is entirely natural plastic color. And notice I'm using the word natural for something that is highly unnatural. But in this context, if the plastic has that intrinsic color already in it, I'm calling that natural, as opposed to the top image where I'm painting over the melted plastic. And somehow what I'm doing, I'm taking as man-made or unnatural, although of course all of this is man-made and completely unnatural, but just in my particular lexicon, this is how I think of these objects. Next one, please. And it quickly became, I have to say, I didn't need to ask anybody to contribute their plastic because I had so much of my own that, and even what started to happen, I had to stop collecting my stuff because it was eating me out of my studio. I mean, that would have been another very interesting art project just to fill up my studio with it. But I opted not to go in that direction. But I did make various, I'd have hundreds, literally hundreds of these little abstract sculptures. And you can see they make how they can be grouped into installations. And they're almost like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, the way they fit together. So you can, create butterfly-like images, you can stack them on a couch, et cetera, et cetera. But it's just really a testament to how much I use, and by extension, I don't want to preach to other people. This is all about me and my guilt, my individual guilt. And this is one way that I had of dealing with it. Next one, Michael. And for this exhibition at the Series Gallery that Marcia put together, we chose a couple of pieces from the collection. This one is called Pre-Existing Conditions because it's made predominantly from those pill containers. And again, I didn't have, these I've been collecting for years. And I used this is actually a heavy piece, more so than the others, because there's quite a few of these little pill containers in here. You know, we all grew up with the orange ones, and now they're mainly white. So this is a combination of orange and white mainly. Next one. This one, I was making a piece and I was using this where you put the dishes to dry, a drying rack. I was using that as my table to work on, and the plastic just kind of melted into that, and I decided to keep it all together. And what it really, it reminds me of my childhood, where I would stand with my mother in the kitchen and she'd be washing the dishes or whatever. But thinking about it now, it's really a comment on how all our food, 99.999%, it comes wrapped in plastic.
Right.
You know, you can't buy food of takeout or at the grocery store without being exposed to plastic. It's just, and I have to say that plastic is really a remarkable material, and it's a victim of its own success. The reason it's everywhere now is because it's so versatile and can be used for so much. I mean, everything from all the equipment in the hospitals to wrapping our food. The only thing is, we as a human species, we're not pretty good at making rational decisions about its use. Yes, it's good. Yes, it could have been handled much better. Yes, it didn't have to destroy the planet. But I mean, part of the reason it's everywhere is because it's really a remarkable man-made material. We just have to learn to respect it, and of course, to respect our environment in the process.
Walter, Simone Spicer asks, how and where are you melting this toxic stuff?
Well, you know, I only have 5 minutes, so hopefully there'll be another time for me to go into more depth. But let me keep going, and the answer will somewhat come out a little bit. Next slide. Michael, please. Yeah, now this one has what I would call natural blue plastic on the right. That nice cobalt blue was a jar lid. And then the rest of it was me painting over the white melted plastic. The next one. And this one I call Drugstore Miracle, just because I didn't realize it until I was photographing this piece for this presentation, that it was a Dwayne Reed plastic bag under a Walgreens bag. And again, just another example of how we overuse plastic. Next one. And all of these pieces were made before the pandemic, mainly in 2019, but I'm sure we all of us remember that the world didn't just become insane in 2020. It was out of control way before that. And certainly the environmental problem started way before that. But what I wanted to say here, these pieces I was really filled with rage when I was making these. And I did stop making them because of the issue of plastic toxicity. And I got tired of answering that question because plastic is ubiquitous, it's everywhere. I'm not creating more plastic. I'm just converting it from one form to another. And of course, I was working under an environmental hood. I was masked, and it was all going through a hood. But because of that issue, I did stop making these about a year ago. And it's only now in retrospect that I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at them with a fresh eye, one could say. But I think, yes, plastic is toxic, but it's toxic whether it's solid, liquid, or gas. But that was an issue that did come up with me making these pieces. And what the other thing I want to say is that with the COVID, with quarantine and all that, I was really amazed at, like, within days, the earth began to recover. And we all remember seeing fish in Venice again, and the air getting much cleaner after a few days of diminished traffic. So I hope that when we do finally stop some of the terrible environmental practices that we're doing, that the earth will heal quickly. We may not survive as a species, but I know the earth will survive in one form or another. Next slide. And this piece I call Thirst because it's made mainly from water bottles, plastic water bottles. The next slide. And as other speakers tonight were mentioning, and I remember, I think Noreen was talking about it, and a few others as well, it's really about personal responsibility. So I am responsible for a significant amount of plastic pollution just by living my life and just by drinking bottled water. And I have to take responsibility, and I have to absolve myself of some of the guilt that I feel, if I positively can, for supposedly caring about the environment and yet simultaneously enjoying what is an unsustainable lifestyle. So yeah, we have this confrontation between deterioration and regeneration, garbage and art, worthlessness and meaning. And it's all coming to a head in our time. And we, I think we're all aware of the terrible situation that we're in. And as an artist, I feel it's my responsibility to do what I'm doing right now. So I'll stop there, I guess.
Thank you. Well worth waiting for you, Walter.
Thank you.
I have to thank Michael Krasowitz. He always comes to our aid. Thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate it. Sorry, we did go a little bit over, but we had 9 speakers tonight, and that was a great and somewhat sombering presentation. I will add, in a way, Walter, you're like the John Chamberlain of plastic.
Thank you. Wow.
I will say that the common thing that came up here was sort of a repurposing and a transformation. You made a great point, Walter. TV is great. We use it in terrible ways, but if you know how to use it, TV can be incredibly educational. And somehow as a species, we can invent plastic, light, so functional, so formable, and yet somehow we've got an island like twice the size of Texas floating in the ocean and destroying. This was a sombering thought. I think many of the artists showed transformations, and also you sort of turn things into the beautiful. And, we're not going to solve the world's problems with one step, but it's all the sort of little steps that everyone here is doing tonight that sort of makes it happen. Because we know we can't move a mountain, but we can all like move a pebble or dig a little dirt out. I want to thank Marcia Annenberg. Marcia, would you like to say a few closing words?
I was just so thrilled to see everyone's work all together, because when you do curate as Fran and so many of you know, or Lois, it's more fragmented, and to see it all as a whole is really, I'm so excited about the show. I'm so thrilled with how it came together, and I'm really looking forward to being together in person live at the gallery in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Marcia.
Thank you, Marcia.
Yeah, thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you,
Again,
Barry.
everybody.
That was wonderful. You're a wonderful narrator.
Mm.
Our ATOA Artist Talk on Art. Join us next Monday. We have talks every Monday. I think all the artists and Marcia, and of course, all the participants who came and everybody's comments, it really goes a long way for an artist to have the sort of positive reinforcement, or just hear kind words. Sometimes maybe you can heal the world with one kind word at a time. And we shared a lot of nice, kind thoughts. So thank you to everybody. What a nice night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
It was a great group of artists. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
so
so
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.